We move now to Commissioner Kathy Dickhut, DPD Deputy Commissioner Kathy Dickhut. She's going to provide a presentation on We Will Chicago. We Will Chicago is a 3-year citywide planning initiative under Mayor Lori E. Lightfoot that will encourage neighborhood growth and vibrancy while addressing social and economic inequities that impair Chicago's legacy as a global city. The Department of Planning and Development will provide an update on the We Will Chicago planning process, which will include an overview of pre-planning work completed in 2020 and the upcoming work plan for 2021. That's quite a high bar to say that this plan will ensure our legacy as a global city. I mean, hopefully that some of that legacy is already happening. But anyway, go ahead, Ms. Dick. I appreciate your being here.
Thank you, Chairman. And for the record, Kathy Dickhut with the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Development for Citywide Planning and Historic Preservation. Well, yeah, I think you want to set a high bar and see how close to it you can get. So next slide, Brad. So citywide plans offer an opportunity to acknowledge existing conditions while also looking beyond those immediate concerns at ideas and options to create a better future. Now, and the last discussion was quite interesting and totally relates. So over the past 50 years, Chicago has evolved as a city with huge disparities in the amount of investment and growth in our communities, our neighborhoods, and the health of the individuals that live there. The map here, the two maps here show the change in income between 1970 and 2017 and illustrate the stark differences between incomes on the south and west sides, which as we know are majority Black and brown communities, versus the north side, which are often majority white.
And I'm going to, I'm going to stop. You already, I mean, you know that I've asked you to put the sources of data on that and so on, but I do want to say something about this map besides the point that you just made. Not only are you seeing, because this is a period of 70 to 2017, and so you see it over time. And so yes, you see an increase in numbers of low income people in Black and brown neighborhoods. But here's the other part that I want to call attention to. You also see in the predominantly white neighborhoods, you see a dramatic increase from 70 to 2017 in increases in high income and the concentrations of high income. And so what that suggests is what we're seeing here is an increase in the wealth gap, which I think is really an important point to highlight, right? It's not just that some people are getting poorer, but that others are getting richer, and the gap is really increasing. And that's part of what I think we need to be sure that we're addressing.
Correct. That's absolutely right. And this is our present. It cannot be our future. So next slide. So citywide plans are common practice. Chicago hasn't done one since the '66 comprehensive plan and then something in the '80s, but other peer cities have recently adopted plans. You can see here Boston, New York, Los Angeles. And just to point out, Boston, they're one of the cities that also hadn't done a citywide plan in 50 years. And so this is something we desperately need to initiate. Next slide. So similar to those plans, a lot which talk about visions for the city and policies for the city, we intend to look at these things. Now, this isn't the total universe, but definitely things that we need to address are criteria and metrics to guide land use and zoning decisions for adoption by Plan Commission and City Council. Standards for neighborhood and regional plans for city adoption. How we're going to align our budgets with capital projects and the policy priorities with this long-term vision that we'll create. How are we going to foster innovation in public financing tools, which we are familiar with and are somewhat limited, and incentives to ensure equitable development across the city. And then also creating standards primarily for agencies for civic and community engagement in public decision-making. Next slide. So this is a general timeline. The plans such as these typically take about 2 to 3 years. And what you see here is 2020, which we were doing pre-planning. So we're not even counting that. But I will update you on what that pre-planning was, which is the principles, themes, and pillars. So 2021, our goal is to, at the end of the year, have research and policy reports to present, not for adoption, but to present that then will evolve into final policy plan by the end of 2022. And at the bottom, you see an engagement arrow that is starting out a little small and gets wider. And our intent And as we move forward, we're developing a myriad different ways of creating engagement opportunities. So more expand and deepen. And then also DPD has initiated quarterly aldermanic updates on the We Will plan and other plans and other initiatives we do. So to let all the aldermen know what is happening here. And then also we'll be coming back to Plan Commission as we are now, and we will at other junctures. Next slide. So what we heard during the pre-planning phase and what we focused on were 2 principles, 5 themes that arose, and 7 pillars. And they all weave together, and we will have to keep them all in mind as we progress. So the 2 foundational principles, next slide, are equity, which is essential to address the depopulation, which was just being spoken about, poverty and health disparities, among other things. And then resiliency, which we also just spoke about, because the climate is changing, which will require individuals, infrastructure, buildings to be resilient, and our technologies, so that we can move into the next phases. Next slide. So 5 themes have been identified, and this happened through a series of workshops that were hosted and facilitated by one of our partners, Metropolitan Planning Commission, where we had over 60 government, community foundation, civic, and business leaders from Chicago, but also from the 7 cities you see on the map there, which had recently, in the last 5 years or so, completed citywide plans. So we had a lot of discussion about what worked, what didn't work, what do you need to do. And so 5 themes emerged from that, which are historical reckoning and trust building, systemic evaluation of equity impacts, accessible and meaningful community engagement, accountability through shared metrics and transparency, and sustained interagency and cross collaboration. Next slide. So we also identified 7 pillars, and other cities also categorize the kinds of issues that cities work with into pillars or topics. So we looked at other cities, found these 7, and then next slide, we held a series of conversations with individuals across the city. So we had a team of consultants assisting us and really tried to get people from the lived experience realm and to the professional and in between, and had small conversations about what do these pillars mean to you. I would also add that during the same time, we had conversations with a group that's focused on the river. There's groups focused on both the industrial corridors on the southwest side and on the far south side. And we presented about that, I think in January. And also there were conversations with individuals concerned about the loop. So all of that information helped us to just get an idea of how we would start the conversations about each of these pillars. So to the next slide. So what we will show you here is, here's the pillar icon. You can see an image, and we've had images that kind of help let you see what we're talking about. And on the left in the box, under what it says, what do we mean when we talk about, these are the conversations and what rolled up, I would say, with lots of different input. Not to say that there weren't other individual things said, but these are the categories of what people talked about, what it meant to them when they talked about housing and neighborhoods. So here it's people and community central to the planning process for housing and neighborhoods, equity and neighborhood options, safety, affordability in neighborhoods, and diversity of amenities in every neighborhood. Next slide. When we spoke about economic development, and I see some things similar to what you saw with the previous presentation, leverage all assets across Chicago, rebrand Chicago's image, a strong job network between downtown and neighborhoods, build across multiple agencies and sectors, and think of equitable resources and access to quality jobs. Next pillar. Transportation and infrastructure. So what we were hearing there is prioritize multimodal accessibility, acknowledge the diversity of populations and their specific needs, broadband access and real-time technology. The basics, maintenance, inspection, and enforcement with consequences, green infrastructure and open space, and the issues of increased traffic, truck traffic, and pollution. Next pillar. In the pillar of environment, climate, and energy. People wanted to see community accessible green solutions, something they could do in their everyday lives. Community centered wealth, environmental justice and air quality, walkable wards, green sector jobs and education in those jobs, and Chicago waterways as one system. Next pillar. Arts and culture, equal access, opportunity to the arts, citywide organizational assessment of facilities and needs, and funding for the arts. Next pillar. Public health and wellness. Everyone has access to healthy food. Parity in healthcare and mental health despite race and class, access to health information. The pollution burden and its exposure on populations. Investment in health and wellness, and public safety and restorative justice. And then the last slide, pillar is lifelong education, which actually comes from all of the other 6 pillars, because besides engaging K to 12 students to help them succeed, which when you talk about education was one of the first things that comes to mind, also talking about education opportunities for adults in STEM, green sector workforce development. What does that look like? How do I get educated in that? Build civic responsibility, capacity, respect, and tenacity. And that would be among the entire citizenry. And identify gaps in training that support access to jobs. So this is a lot. And like I said, we have a lot to do. We haven't done things for 50 years. So besides the team in DPD, who is managing a lot of the day-to-day, we have a sizable team in addition to DPD. And because this is a citywide plan, that's just necessarily so. So we have a team in the mayor's office that we work with weekly, and this is very critical to address that interagency and cross-discipline kind of work that we're going to need to do. We have identified for right now, initially 7 individuals, 6 in city departments and then 1 in the mayor's office, to be the prime liaison to each one of the research teams so that they can go back to their department. And if we have a specialty need, which many departments have, they can identify that and get information from those people and go back and forth with their departments, their commissioners and staff. And then we have a consultant team to assist us both in hosting all of these conversations, and we expect a lot more in 2021, and then helping with graphics, putting all the information together. So we will be getting consultant report to help this team, this very large team. Next slide. So this is idea of how we're organizing the governance structure right now. So up in the top right, we will be providing updates to the mayor, to the aldermen, and to the commissions, as I've already said. We're looking at two kind of groups that would be looking at all of the issues. So there's more of a cross collaboration look, right? An advisory council that would have more non-governmental individuals on it, plus representatives from the research teams, and then an interagency steering committee just to make sure that the government and the departments are sharing information and understanding where we're going and what's happening. But I'd like to spend a little more time on the circles on the bottom, the 4 circles. And these are the some of the engagement and more specific engagement that we're ready to begin in 2021. So first on the left, we're looking at having a research team for each of the 7 pillars. We would have city department individuals on that. We're looking for private sector, philanthropy, civics, maybe community-based coalitions, educators and aldermen. And for many of these, we'll be looking for volunteers. And we may be looking at the Department of Housing set up their ARO task force and maybe looking for applications for volunteers. But if you go to the second circle, we're looking at 14 partners. And we intend to provide stipends to 14 different groups so that they can participate. The intent here is to bring the local or lived experience together with the planning and policy professionals. And therefore, we are going to try to target groups that typically may not be able to participate in this kind of policy discussion, just based on the size of the organizations or other things. So we're looking at maybe there'll be geographic representation, or maybe they'll be more focused on a specific group like a youth organization or a group that works specifically with elderly or some other type of population. And then we are already, or I should say, Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events is already well underway in identifying 7 artists and pairing them with 7 organizers to also work with each pillar as a way to both bring the art viewpoint to the process and to get input through through the way that they work in a broader community and bring that back. So all the 7, 14, and 7 representatives of all those will be working together, but we illustrate it this way just because of the way that we're going to solicit their participation. And then, of course, we have our wewill chicago.gov website, which we will be, which you can go to now, and which we will be able to do, and DPD will be developing like surveys that we can do online. We will provide opportunities to comment via social media. We will be developing some hard copy materials, perhaps for the aldermen to have at their offices so they can have that for the people that come in. We will develop some planning materials and activities geared towards youth, which perhaps we can work with the schools and teachers to distribute. And so we also may have live stream events. So we will be working on all of these types of activities to get really the broadest public and to try to reach as many people as possible. The next slide. Again, this is 2021, just the 3-year plan. And if you go to the next slide, this is just a breakdown by quarter. So really in Q1, like it says, we're preparing. We have to, you know, the organizational structure I shared, just putting all the information together is what we've been doing this first quarter. So that we can soon announce these calls for open for partner organizations to participate. And here we are letting you know how we're proceeding. In Q2, we do want to launch the pillar research teams, the 7 teams, and begin further development of engagement resources. We'll be doing a lot of listening in Q3, a lot of listening, putting the material together, putting it back out there. So by the end of Q4 that we can have research reports and policy ideas for information that are going to, we see, lead to more defined actions and policies at the end of the following year. So I think the last slide just provides the website page, and you can get more information on all of the pillars, the findings from those conversations at the website. And I believe other information that we have gleaned so far.
Thank you, Ms. Dickhut. So as I wait for see if there's any other comments, I want to just say something real quickly. I was glad that we finally got the environmental justice and the issue around pollution in there, and the issue around truck traffic and so on. But I did notice in the 2 different slides where these issues appeared, if you look at those slides, there are all these positive things. This is what we want to get. And if you look at that, the bottom of the list, it reads as though you're saying we want to have increased truck traffic and pollution. So
okay, that's bad editing, and that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, you can go back to, well, and I think it's more than text editing, because it requires a statement of, see right there, it reads as we want to,
Yes.
we want to have increased truck traffic and more pollution is how that reads.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so besides the text setting, what is it you're really asking for there, right? And I think it's requires some thinking through, and then going through then the next, I think it was maybe 2 slides over. Oh yeah, wait, no, I guess it was back. Okay, go back 1. No, let's see, maybe it was 1 more, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 1 more up then. 1 more then, go back, keep going 1 more up. Well, okay, 1 more, maybe it was further back. But it was the one that talked about the pollution burden.
Oh, that should be health, Brad. I think pollution burden and exposure.
Yeah. If you read that one, it says everyone has access to healthy food. There's parity in healthcare. There's access to health information. And we want pollution burden and exposure is how that reads. And I don't think that's the intention there.
That is absolutely not the intention.
Okay, so if we can get those 2.
We can do that.
All right, I see no other comments or questions. So I think we thank you for your time. Commissioner Grossman, did you want to add anything or make any comments? This included some discussion of neighborhoods. All right.
Madam Chair, yeah. This is Commissioner Cox.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to help frame this just a little bit, because I think, as you noted earlier, this is a pretty ambitious and aspirational scope. And it's going to take every community of Chicago and every ward of Chicago to participate in this. And when Mayor Lightfoot brought me on and said she wanted to tackle a generational plan, I was elated, because a lot of political leaders can't really see beyond the next election. So for the mayor to engage in a conversation about the future, the generational future of Chicago, it's a big deal. And there is a reason that it hasn't been done in 50 years. But I would argue that if Chicago is going to grow in an equitable way, in an inclusive way, if it's going to address the kind of reckoning with its past that was encapsulated in that series of maps that showed the income inequality and the segregation by race and income that is a part of Chicago's history. We want to tackle this. We want to tackle this head on and understand how it happened, why it happened, what policies were put in place that enabled it to happen, and change the course of the future of Chicago for a generation. And so it is ambitious, and it is aspirational, and it is absolutely essential that we engage in this. So we've taken the time to brief the aldermen about the breadth and the scope and the purpose of this. And they recognize as well that this is an opportunity to reset planning principles and priorities around the themes that Kathy highlighted. So we're going to be working in a very close relationship with those elected leaders and with a number of civic partners who've expressed an interest in this work. And I think our greatest challenge is going to make this, a community-driven effort. So as we very purposely ask the question, who will plan the future of Chicago? The answer is we will. And that means we have to reach tens of thousands of people and engage them in conversations of how they want to see Chicago in their lifetime and in the lifetime of their kids and their grandkids. So I think that community participation, the public participation, is going to be diverse. We're going to engage all forms of technology and meetings and entering into established groups that traditionally gather and in the coming months. And we want to be able to present our findings on a periodic basis to this commission. I would even ask those commissioners who can help us as we try to figure out how do we speak to tens of thousands of people when there's no imminent, project. It's that's going to be a significant challenge, but I think Kathy and her team have done an amazing job of laying the foundation for that. And we have built a team that you see goes way beyond the planning department. So I have enormous confidence, and I feel that, we can do the things that we have to do to show progress, that the city is moving forward, while at the same time, we engage all Chicagoans in a very thoughtful and deliberate conversation about the future of the city. So I love it. It's a both and strategy.
That's it. Both and.
Deliver in the near term, but keep your eyes set on the long term. So again, thank you for allowing us to bring this to the Plan Commission and sharing it with our fellow commissioners and all those who watch and follow the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to call on Commissioner Moore, followed by Commissioner Burnett. I want to remind folks that as Commissioner Cox said, it's an aspirational plan. What it is not is a comprehensive plan. So it's important that we not think that we're looking here at a comprehensive plan. Commissioner Moore, followed by Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox, thank you for those remarks. That was really helpful. You touched on sort of that engagement piece and that daunting task. And I think the chairperson just maybe put my question in a little different perspective of it not being a comprehensive plan, because my question is really around the engagement piece. And what I noticed in the timeline, it starts off very small, and by the time it gets to the end, it's really large, which makes me feel like people are being engaged more or deeper at the end of the plan, when maybe people might feel like things have already been set. People have already got the framework, and then they're brought in at the end to say yay or nay, as opposed to being involved in the process. So I don't know if you want to just think about that a little bit. Maybe it's just how you're portraying that graph, but that's what it sort of raised for me. And the other point I would like to make is I really, in this city and the city of neighborhoods, to have housing, I mean, I like the fact that it's housing in neighborhoods, but what I would love to see, even aspirationally, is if we took neighborhoods and took those 7 pillars and peeled back what pieces of those are really going to impact our neighborhoods. I think we could get a better feel of what we're looking at. And I think that's to Commissioner Grossman's point. I mean, it looks very big to me, which thanks for the aspirational tone. But it's hard, I guess, to wrap your brain around it and see what we're going to come out with. And if we're projecting this to residents and we want input, I think we have to be able to convey the right message from the beginning. But I thank you, Ms. Dickhut. The presentation was great. I actually put in some ideas on the website a few months ago or something. But I didn't get any response back, so I don't know how that works, because you sort of get it in and it's not even a thank you, something. So again, if that's how we're reaching out to the masses of people, we got to be able to do something to tell people they're being heard.
Thanks for that heads up. We'll get on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very good feedback. Commissioner Burnett, followed by Commissioner Searle.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner, and I appreciate what everyone else said, and I recognize, what I always say about plans like this, and we've, my 26 years, we've done a lot of plans. I think it's always important to engage people into thinking bigger, because what I find in a lot of our communities is that we get too complacent. We get too acceptable. Some of us just give up on anything happening in our neighborhoods, and to be able to try, and I agree with trying to get people from the community involved early on, to be able to work on those creative juices that are in people's heads and make them see their community differently. I think it's very important, because, as they always say, you can be what you can see. And also you can't believe it unless you can see it, and so we need to make people see our communities differently, and also not just think that it's for other people, right? Because that's a challenge that I go through a lot in some of our neighborhoods. They think anything that's built is built for somebody else, but not even if it's right across the street from them, So I think it's important to have the community to be a part of it, to have their thoughts and their visions involved, and so they can feel ownership of the growth of what's happening in their community. So I commend everyone that's on board. I've been working with Kathy for a long time. She's excellent, dynamic. She really knows how to engage people and getting them to be creative with their thinking. Matter of fact, we're working on some things in my ward right now over in near West and West Humboldt Park, East Garfield Park area. So I commend all of you all for what you all are doing. And I know that, you know, all these things mutate, right? They continue to grow and continue to develop.
That's
And
right.
actually, you all started out, and really you end up, you know, what you started end up being a less of what it becomes, because it becomes more of what everybody else put into it. So I commend you all on what you all are doing here. Congratulations, and I look forward to working on it with my community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Wasn't there another hand? Where'd that hand go? Okay, so that was it. All right, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Now-
just wanted, it was me.
I thought I saw your hand up and then I didn't see it. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Searle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, to the Commissioner Cox and the Planning Department, to thank you for bringing planning back to the Plan Commission. We have sorely missed it for some long time. And I think, you know, if there are things like that map, which are just eye-opening, you know, from 1971, I think it was, right, to 2017, to compare that to some other cities, and also maybe to find best practices where something like that got turned around in the other direction. I mean, I'm afraid that nationally, the middle class has disappeared anyway, you know. So are we the only ones, or is this kind of the trend of the country? And where are there some places, and what did they do that might help, you know, bring us back to a more equitable city all the way around, even though we're trying our best and doing lots of things, you know. How did these other places maybe do it, and it was so successful? Could be interesting.
Can we get the sources of data on that map too? You don't ever want to have that data without the sources.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
We
thank you.
can look at both those things, especially the plans we just showed you.
Okay, so I'd like to be able to move on, Commissioner Cox. Do you need to make your comment? Oh, I see this. Commissioner Reyes hasn't spoken. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Reyes.
Just very briefly, I know it's late, so I just want to add that, emphasize again the issue of the community engagement. And I don't know how many people participated in the phase that it's already been completed, but in any way that I can help with, I think it's important that we have to bring more people from the community. And hopefully with the vaccine, you know, being in everybody's arms soon, we should be able to do some face-to-face meetings, because people need to have sense of ownership, and they're not even with this aspirational planning process. But if we don't invite them, if we don't motivate their participation, that's not going to happen.
Well, and by them, it also means not the usual suspects. I mean, it's sort of expanding who the they is, right? That's at the table.
Well, I mean, I know we should really move on, but I did want to address this because I have been really pushing part of these plans. They get their authority from the depth of engagement that they touch, that everyone knows and everyone has had an opportunity to engage. So I've set some pretty high aspirations for how many people. We're not going to say it here, but the fact that we're using the aldermatic structure of the city to reach across the entire geography, that's going to be key. We've got 50 wards, and we are talking to all of the aldermen about how to reach their constituencies, because quite frankly, they're pros at being in touch with their constituency. So if we feel that we could use that network, we can convene this conversation across the entire city. So that's the goal. And I appreciate the attention to this issue about it's not by chance that the principles are equity and resiliency, that are issues of our time. This was not the set of issues back in the 60s that they were wrestling with when they had their chance to do a citywide plan. So we are trying to steep it in the moment that our generation is in. And we all know that equity is in the minds of everyone right now, and so is the resiliency of cities. And so we're hoping that that will produce something, a gift, if you will, for future generations about what we were struggling with during our time when we were asked to do a plan like this. So again, thank you for giving this space at this forum. And thank you, Kathy, for your extraordinary work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox, and thank you, Ms. Dickhut, for taking the time to come down and be here. Yes, and as Commissioner Cox said, knowing that we only had 4 items, I wanted to take the opportunity to get some briefings, and so these have been really rich conversations.